Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 33 of the Sustaining the Herd podcast, brought to you by Agri-Services and Engineering of Raymond, Nebraska. I'm your host, Brock Vitek, and different than usual, I am not joined by my co-host, Andrew Wadle, today. So a nice shout out to you, Andrew. Hope things are going well for you today as we're recording. And as Andrew and I often like to say, we sometimes have some firsts here on Sustaining the Herd. And we have a first today, and that is this is our first time, and my first time, solo hosting Sustaining the Herd. And I imagine some more of these might happen in the future. So we're looking forward to that. And we have a special guest with us today. His name is Dan Kurdys, and we'll let Dan introduce himself in a moment. But before that, I would like to tell our new listeners a little bit about Sustaining the Herd, and this will serve as a nice reminder for those of you who are returning listeners. Andrew usually takes care of this part, so we'll see how I do. Here on Sustaining the Herd and at Agri-Services and Engineering, we like to think about sustainability in a few ways. First, it's environmental. It's clean air and water. That's something that we all like to have: clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, clean water for growing crops, and so forth. It's also resource efficiency. Sustainability means doing more with less. This is being more efficient with labor, more efficient with physical resources like fuel, energy, and commodities and raw materials that are inputs for our agricultural production. And finally, sustainability is also, an aspect of sustainability is also sustainable businesses, meaning profitable businesses that can be sustained over the years, across the decades. And that's good for everyone involved, both those working in the business and those in the economy who enjoy the products and services those businesses provide. So with all of that, I would like to welcome our guest, Dan Kurdys with Pairwise, to Sustaining the Herd. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, Brock. Thanks for having me. You're such a bright presence, man. This is so energizing. Glad to be here.
Thank you. It's great to have you. And Dan will be with us to talk about quite a few things today. But before we dig into that, Dan, I'd like to offer you an opportunity to just introduce yourself.
Yeah. Tell a little bit about my story. So coming here with 20 years of experience in ag tech, and it's been an awesome journey. I've got a chance to work on just about every crop in North America, from sugar beets to sugar cane, from almonds to peanuts, and get a really good lay of the land of agriculture in North America, and meet with farmers and ag professionals. And I'm so grateful for those opportunities. Growing up as a farm kid, it's just been a nice just career experience doing that. And part of that journey, technology's always been with me. Like it started, I can't believe this. I started in research with DeKalb, and they had me doing notes on research trials, and they had me use a Palm Pilot as a test of like, would that drive efficiency in research notes? So I'm aging myself there of where that goes to. But it's interesting. I've kept that journey of trying to apply new technology in my roles in different ways, all the way up to acquisition of Climate Corporation and thinking that's how software would change agriculture, to my last role at Bayer, where I led Gen AI applications to agronomy, and now at Pairwise, where in my role I get to work on partnership and explore how AI can change science processes. And I think it's a really interesting question about how much science will AI do, and what will that unlock into the future.
Sure. Thanks for that great intro, Dan. It really sounds like you've done it all when it comes to everything from starting out in agronomy, spending some time in corporate agriculture, and really just working on the leading edge of technology and innovation throughout your career so far. And it sounds like you continue to do that.
Absolutely. And I should say role number one is dad. I'm a dad to four little girls, and
That's awesome.
and my wife at home, and focused on raising them. But it's given me a good chance to. I always get the question of like, what do you do? And so it gives me an opportunity to try and explain these technologies and agriculture to a lot of different people. Seems like at sporting events and airlines, we always get into those conversations. And I really enjoy that. I really enjoy trying to educate on, why ag's important and how innovation matters to our food.
Sure. That's great, Dan. Thank you. And something I forgot to mention when we started out here for all of our listeners, Dan and I are actually sitting across the table from one another recording in person today, because we are here in Lincoln, Nebraska at the AgTech Connect conference, which is hosted by the Combine AgTech Incubator and Invest Nebraska, based here in Lincoln. And Dan is actually giving a keynote address at the conference this afternoon. So it's great to actually be here in person and just be at this gathering of everyone who's interested in ag tech and innovation. And Dan, before we dive into some of your work, I mentioned you're giving a keynote this afternoon, But for all of our listeners, you would remember our previous episode was with Gene Cowell, who's the special agent in charge at the FBI Omaha field office. Dan and I, right before we sat down to record this podcast, just attended the morning keynote session at the conference, which was given by none other than Gene Cowell. And he mentioned AI a couple of times. So before we dive into some of your work with Pairwise and throughout your career, Dan, I was wondering if you just have any reactions to what Agent Cowell had to say in terms of how AI might fit into some of the threats that we're seeing in the industry, or maybe threats, national security threats that AI, people working in AI need to be aware of in the ag industry.
Yeah, Brock. I mean, first I'll say it's just so wonderful these conferences are going again, right? These happy collisions, and we can sit here and both interact over a topic like that, right? Like, where else do you get to put those things together? So it's just great to be here. And I think you can tell from the FBI themes, right? They see AI as this tool that can put bad things on steroids but good things too on steroids, right? And so the typical threat vectors they look at are now like there's AI powering those things, but there's also AI powering the things to fight those. In my role, I see that people in FBI will worry about those threat vectors and how to manage cybersecurity, piracy, fraud, all those things. I see this in applying it to jobs like agronomy and stuff where, like social media, we discovered that there's negative side effects of overuse of social media. I think AI too, there's this growing concern of dependency, right? Where we let it we outsource our thinking. And I think that's the risk that we have to manage. Is it's a tool. You still got to think. You still got to use your judgment. And in fact, it makes your judgment and strategic thinking and creativity all the more valuable. But we shouldn't be roped into like thinking we're just going to outsource all our thinking, right? I remember in 10th grade, I was doing geometry and we had these graphing calculators. And I programmed a graphing calculator, so I had a way to cheat on a geometry exam, right? And my parents caught me, and they were really cool about it, right? They were like, "Look, it's pretty cool that you programmed a graphing calculator to like have this thing, and where you could do geometric proofs on that. But every shortcut you take is a skill you wish you had later." And I was an athlete, right? I was a swimmer, and when you're a swimmer, milliseconds matter. And if the first thing you think about when you lose a race is, where did I take a shortcut that could have made me that millisecond faster? And I think that's how we have to think about AI. Is we can't just take shortcuts. We got to develop skills, use it to augment our skills and get better, not just shortcut our way to automate our thinking.
I really appreciate your perspective on that, Dan. Yes, there are national security threats and cybersecurity threats we need to think about with AI, but maybe one of the biggest risks, as you just talked about, is the risk to our dependency on it. I know when we were walking over from the conference center to the room where we're recording right now, we were talking about this, and might be a silly analogy, but I said, well, I remember when I first got a vehicle with a backup camera and backup sensors. And now when I get in my old vehicle that doesn't have it, I feel completely incompetent and like a bad driver because I'm worried I'm going to back into something. We rely on these tools, or we come to be dependent on them. And I think AI is absolutely no exception, especially as it continues to advance and enable us in what we do in the ag industry and beyond.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and I mean, it's so funny in the same way you rely on those things now and how you do that, and they save people from incidents, right? So they add value. But yeah, you got to learn how to drive, right, and practice all those skills. And I think that's a good story for AI, is how we're using it to augment and still form those skills and get better at those skills.
Sure. Well, I'd like to switch gears into some of the work you've done in your previous roles, and as well as what you're doing now at Pairwise. And you gave us a little bit of your career journey so far, but could you go a little deeper on what your path has looked like, starting out in agronomy and now becoming Dan the AI guy?
Yeah. So 2022, I was playing around in the sandbox of ChatGPT, and in 2022, like nobody was really using it.
What's ChatGPT? Yeah, probably what we all said in 2022.
That's right.
I hadn't heard of it yet.
But I saw it was like climbing in terms of skills on different domains and getting better at science. And so I said, well, I wonder how much agronomy could do. And I did some questions, and it was pretty good. And I'm like, well, I wonder if we could put some knowledge from Bayer in there, would it get better? And so we did a POC, and it turned out it did. And then we just rode that wave, right, of, oh, wow, you can make this thing with certain data sets pretty good at agronomy. Now, a challenge is, how do you get the right context to answer questions? Because, we know that in agriculture, like agronomy is very context dependent, and you got to pull in those variables. And I think my frame that I see is that is the climb we will make. I call it a switch to agentic agriculture, where we're moving from hardware as the platform to knowledge as the platform. And these unique knowledge sets will drive agents that start to augment our capabilities. And I think about it as another teammate in the solution. So an agronomist will now have this agent with it that helps them diagnose and make better recommendations, better diagnostics, better decisions going forward. And that's the bet I'm making on my career, is that that's the future. And so I've pivoted here to Pairwise, which is a leading CRISPR powerhouse for gene editing, working on these amazing products, right? It's like seedless blackberries, pitless cherries that can be created with these products. You got kids, or if you ever ate a blackberry, everybody hates picking out the seeds, right? Or pitting a cherry. And so these products that will amaze consumers is the outcome. But in the back end, it's this question of how much science can they do? And Pairwise is really thinking about how AI is integrated to their processes and drives improvement with each cycle of things they do. And they're seeing this rapid improvement in efficiency of gene editing. And so that's for me, like the really exciting future that we're headed towards.
Sure. And Dan, for our listeners who may not be familiar with CRISPR technology, could you just put that in layman's terms, what exactly you guys do at Pairwise? What is CRISPR, and what's it take to develop these pitless cherries or seedless blackberries?
Yeah, absolutely. So gene editing is kind of the category, and CRISPR is a tool set within that. And I liken it to like editing a book. So CRISPR is a cutter that lets you go in and like cut out certain sections of a book if you're editing it, make those deletions. And then there's other tools that go around it, and that's what makes Pairwise really unique, is they have this fulcrum platform of technologies, and they've developed this really nice complementary tool set. So, think of it like an editor like Microsoft Word. You can use Control F to like find all the things you need to delete, and then you have a cutter to delete them. That's the kind of stuff that
Sure.
Pairwise does really well in that technology.
And that things like that make it possible for us to enjoy pitless cherries.
That's right. It improves breeding, right? It makes breeding that much more precise, that much faster, and enables just really awesome products that come out as the outcome.
Sure. And as you described that, Dan, I think sometimes there can be some misconceptions around plant breeding and gene editing and GMOs. And some people may view it as, this is a man-made, manufactured organism, this plant is, versus, well, we're just accelerating nature, what would happen naturally as plants breed and evolve over time, right? Could you debunk that a little bit?
Yeah, it's so funny. These are the conversations I get in on airplanes and with neighbors at sporting events and stuff, and it's helping them understand, like, hey, corn was not always corn. There's been a long evolution of the corn we see out in the field, right? From Teosinte. So, you walk people through that, but now, exactly to your point, we have tools that can accelerate and be more precise about what do we want these plants to be, right? And like I said, we all experience these things that we don't like about plants, like putting blackberries in a smoothie and then you're filtering through all the seeds in a smoothie. Like that nobody likes that experience. So now we have the tools to say, oh, let's make that experience better. Let's make a more consistent blackberry that holds up better on the shelf, that grows better, that then you have that improved taste experience and not having seeds. And so I just think it's a really amazing technology now that we have at our disposal to just make better plants.
That really is. Dan, as throughout the course of the conversation, I'm seeing AI in ag. At least I think it kind of splitting into two camps here. One, I might describe it as a tool, a scientific tool, like what Pairwise is doing for plant gene editing. And then you mentioned your work at Bayer, where AI could serve as a tool for agronomists. Something pull out of their pocket, have on their phone or iPad, and a tool to make them better at what they do. Where do you see both of these camps going, where it's more, I'll call something in the lab versus a handheld tool for the boots on the ground out in the industry? Do you see these on a similar trajectory for adoption and where they're going, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I talk a lot about my grandpa. He was a tool and die maker. And when he retired, he had this habit of, he would go to auctions and buy tools and then bring them to me, and he would like quiz me, hey, do you know what this tool does? You know what this tool does? And I would never know. And he'd just tease me. He'd be like, oh, you got a degree from Michigan, you got an MBA, and you don't know what this tool is, right? And he never went to college. He just apprentice line. So it was always this funny banter we had. But it impressed on me, there's a tool for everything. And you don't start with a tool. You start with a problem, right? And I think what Gen AI is doing is it's this force multiplier that opens solutions to problems that didn't exist before, because it opens that universe, because it either can handle more data or make it less cost to approach problems that we couldn't before. And so it's a force multiplier on a whole bunch of stuff. And to your point, it's a force multiplier to agronomy. It's a force multiplier to science. And I think the intersection of Gen AI with some of these other emerging technologies are really interesting spaces. And so the problem on agronomy is, we all know this, like expertise is hard to get in ag. And expertise really matters. Like think about agriculture error where the wrong product is selected or it's applied wrong. Or
it could kill a whole field.
I know, and it happens, right? It
and
happens all over the world all the time, and it affects livelihoods, and it's a big deal, right?
It is.
And so how do we get expertise that has largely been constrained because it's human-based into Gen AI that then can go everywhere? And so where the knowledge is never in the interaction of agronomist and farmer, like right when they need it in the field. And now we have this solution to get it there. And I just think it'll unlock amazing productivity boosts in agriculture when that starts to happen.
Yeah, and I think rather than replacing the agronomist in this example, or we could just generally say replacing the person, AI enables the person, makes them better at what they do, right?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of it. It's an augmentation, right? Having an expert in the loop, helping them access more information, bring that to the farmer conversation is the right path. Absolutely.
And that might be a hot take today, but it's something I've been thinking a lot about and having some conversations about with individuals is AI going to replace a lot of people, or is it going to augment and be a tool for them? And I think that's one of the biggest debates happening now, not just in ag, but in the economy or in the marketplace in general, because, sustainability is something we talk about here on Sustaining the Herd. It's the core of what we do. Say 3 to 5 years ago, I feel like sustainability was the biggest buzzword out there. And now we don't hear as much about sustainability. Now AI is maybe the buzzword of the day. It's very important. It's here to stay, but people are, it's a buzzword. People are deciding, what do I think about it? What's my opinion? What's this going to look like in the future? And I think, my hot take, and it sounds like we agree, is that it's not going to replace us. It's going to make us better at what we do.
Yeah, I get that question a lot, right? And people concerned about jobs and the Terminator scenario. And I think more of the framing of the theory of constraints, where AI can be targeted at a constraint and make the whole process better. And so one thing I come back with is like AI makes it possible for you to do any job.
Mm-hmm.
I could do a little coding, but I'm not a great coder. But now with AI, I can do way more coding than I ever could possible. I never could do design. Like now I can make graphics like on a short prompt, right? And so what jobs and tasks, what outcomes can I enable now that I can do those jobs as an individual? And I think that's the promise of where we're headed is, thinking about what problems can you solve as an individual now that AI can help you do any job that wasn't approachable before, and what value does that unlock?
You're exactly right. I'd like to pivot a little bit. Something I've been thinking about is that AI certainly opens a lot of doors for the ag industry and across the economy, but it also raises a lot of questions, in my opinion. So I'd like to ask you, what are some of where's the line perhaps of when we start to get into some ethical questions with AI? And I'd like to probably stick to the ag industry in this conversation. I'm sure we could go on many other topics and dive deeper into it, but people are talking about that. Where's the ethical and moral line when it comes to the application of AI and ag, and how can we navigate those maybe uncharted waters?
Absolutely. I mean, ag industry is really a great place to go to get this kind of wisdom, because we've lived through a lot of that, right? Of bringing new technologies and how to work with society on those technologies. And so I think agriculture is really a cool place to have this conversation about. We want innovation to accelerate, right? Innovation is good for society, especially in agriculture. It unlocks, a lot of value for society when agriculture increases productivity. And so innovation usually outpaces the laws and the ethical frameworks. And so what I encourage people is, don't sit on the sideline. Get off the bench and get in the game, be a leader, get out there, use the tools, and figure out how to use them well, how to make good with those tools. And that is the right space to really make sure that we're addressing trust. We're addressing the ethical questions. We're finding those moral boundaries and guardrails and forming those as we go. And that's the biggest encouraging thing I can say is like, get in the game, play with the tools, especially if you're an expert in agronomy and you work with farmers. We need more of those people being leaders and really shaping how we build trust with these tools, how they form, and influencing that.
I completely agree. Don't just sit on the sidelines and be curious and complain. Be a stakeholder, have some skin in the game, get in the arena, and help write the narrative.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly the thing to be talking about is how more people in agriculture start to use these tools and unlock that. There's some really cool things forming. AI AgriBench is a platform to build benchmarks to create trust with Gen AI in agriculture. And so I think that's a great thing to point people to, is get involved in stuff like that, where you can generate question and answer pairs that then can be used to evaluate these tools to see how accurate they are, what kind of answers they give, and what biases do they have. And the more things like that we can creates trust, creates transparency. I think it's really good for the industry to start to move towards those spaces. Plus, it attracts data science people in the tech world to work on our space to unlock more innovation when we have those types of tools and knowledge sets. So there's a double win on doing that stuff.
It definitely does. And I think you just raised a really good point there, Dan. You said that it attracts other people to the industry, whether it's data scientists or people who work more in tech and software. Yeah, I think AI opens the door to bring more people into the ag industry, people who may not come from a farm or a ranch or even be remotely close to a traditional agriculture background. And this might help some people to find a path into the industry. And we all know that we can benefit from diverse perspectives and new ideas. So that's a really good point there.
Yeah, I mean, I love that take, because I can't imagine a better time to go into agriculture. Like, there are so many cool jobs. You can fly drones, right? I mean, like, where is there a job like that? You come in and you can fly drones on a field. You can work on Gen AI, like cutting edge stuff applied to a space. And there's the unique thing about agriculture is a lot of our data isn't like really well organized to access yet. And so we have to solve that problem in ag, is how do we get what I call this dark data, the tacit knowledge in experts' head, in a spot where we can train these tools to provide really good insights to others. And so, yeah, I think there's just really cool jobs in agriculture right now for people to come in that didn't really look at the industry before.
Yeah, we just talked a little bit ago about AI can augment and be a tool and, help us to be better rather than replace people. And we hear so often about the brain drain in agriculture and just in general in rural areas. And maybe AI helps to combat that to some extent, and not the way that people may think in terms of, AI serves as a substitute or replacement for the people we're losing, but it helps others to come into the industry. This is kind of having an epiphany right now. It's something I had not thought about with AI. I'm going to have to think about this one a little more.
Well, and I've loved to hear at the Lincoln campus and the conference. I mean, that was a theme last night. I saw all these stakeholders, from bankers to venture capital to startup people to, people in industry, and, AI is a theme and talking about that. So yeah, I think there's some buzz of like, hey, this could really, kind of rejuvenate some innovation, change job opportunities in the space. And looks like Nebraska and particularly this town has really gotten behind, supporting ag and building innovation in ag. And I just think it's a wonderful opportunity with Gen AI coming in to jump on that and be leaders in that space and form the jobs of the future. Absolutely.
Completely agree with you on that one, Dan. I'd like to zoom out a bit and look at the big picture. So I correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but I believe the title of your keynote that you'll give this afternoon is something along the lines of Agentic AI, Seeds, Silicon, and Soul. Is that right? I think that's a really, really fun title. I look forward to attending your keynote later. Going on that theme, I think we've only seen the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how AI is going to transform the ag industry. I'd simply like to ask you, what's next?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I think the cool things coming are agents, right? And that Seed, Silicon, and Soul is somewhat me, right? My seed history, the silicon is the technology, and the soul is I'm a dad. And I see that there's a reason to educate on this space, not only for people in general, but my daughters, right? Informing what their future looks like. But it's also, I think, a really interesting setup for talking about where this is headed, and that those fusion points between germplasm, between these new technologies, but that we have to keep the soul in it. There's an element beyond just intelligence, which is really what's changed. Gen AI has moved really fast in IQ, right? The top models are at like 120. Grok 4 might be a little over 120 IQ. 1 in 50 people is over 120 IQ. So they've gotten so intelligent so fast, but intelligence isn't everything, right? That when you interact with 4 daughters, logic and reasoning only get you so far. There's an element as a dad that you have to have EQ. You have to have that caring and creativity. And so it's understanding that, right? Understanding that it's a really valuable tool, that can do amazing things, but there are limitations, and there's a soul element we have to keep involved. And that soul element is going to get all the more valuable into the future. And so I think in preparing people for agentic agriculture is focus on those things, right? What is the edge stuff that is really important to know on context and verification to solve agronomy problems? Where is their judgment calls and get really good at that? Where is their vision and creativity needing? Where is there a relationship and EQ needed? Those are the skills of the future that are going to get really valuable.
Absolutely, and very well said. In my opinion, you cannot replace that human element. I think AI can do a lot of the processing and maybe the logical thinking and data analysis, but it's not a human being who has relationships, who shows up at the farm, someone you've been working with for years. You can't replace that, but AI can come in and help you to support you in that role. And a couple of episodes ago, talking about a lot of previous episodes here, mentioned Gene Cowell earlier. And, before that, Andrew and I did an episode on preparing the next generation of ag professionals. And we talked about how it's important, no matter what your role is, whether you're in business or you're an engineer, a scientist, a farmer, you name it, it's important to focus on the soft skills, or what I like to call the hard skills, because they are critically important. Those things being knowing how to communicate, written word, public speaking, spoken word, and being able to convey your thoughts, represent yourself well. It all matters so much. And I think that AI might be another hot take, maybe not a so hot take, I don't know. I think AI amplifies the need for those soft skills.
I totally agree. I just latch on to one just to drive it home is writing. I think writing is a great one. I love to write. Like, it's just a side hobby. I love to write, and it just helps me organize my thoughts. It helps me think better. And there's this. We go back to the dependency thing. I think a lot of people are really tempted that AI just writes for you, right? I mean, that's a huge temptation, I'm sure, in colleges, like we're on a college campus, right? Of having AI just do your papers and write for you.
Sure.
And educators are going to have to adjust to that. But it's no better time to write as an individual, because you can write things that can train these models and unlock answers for untold amounts of people in the future. And so on one hand, you see all these people that are like outsourcing their thinking and bowing out of like, oh, there's no future for writers. I think the opposite. I think especially if you're in agriculture, there's no better time if you're an expert in an area that understands how to manage a crop, manage a pest in a certain area, understands the soil dynamics of a certain area. Write about it. Write about that expertise and bring it out. And you could be, the expert that shapes how Gen AI can better respond to agronomy answers and support farmers in your area. It's a great time to write.
Exactly. And, Dan, as we start to round out our episode here, I'd like to ask you this. What should aspiring ag professionals of the future, whether that's someone who's in high school or college now, or someone earlier in their career like myself, what should those professionals of the future be thinking about as they prepare to be the individuals working in the industry with AI as a tool in the next 10 to 20 years?
Yeah, I the biggest shift in my career that's helped me just feel meaning and more fulfilled. I hear a lot of people, they're like, I just want to get more meaning and impact out of my work, right? Is go build something.
Yeah.
Go find a problem, build something. It doesn't have to be perfect. Gen AI gives you the tools to build things that, before would cost a lot of money, and now you can do them on your own. So go find a problem, build something to solve it, start talking to people about it, showing it to them with customers, having those interactions. That will be the most meaningful thing you can do to shape your future and add meaning to your life and purpose. And I encourage young ag professionals, go build something. Just do it.
You heard it here, folks. Go build something. Just do it. I love that. That's one of many notable and quotable statements from our episode here. Another one I think was happy collisions. That was pretty noteworthy earlier as well. So with all that being said, Dan, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you would like to say or talk about before we wrap this up?
Hey, Brock, I really appreciate being on the show. I think it's amazing that you're having all these individuals come in and being a promoter for agriculture. And we talked about our shared connection of FFA, and to see FFA individuals go into their careers and be connecting people and helping drive this inspiration for what our industry can be. It's just a wonderful thing. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, thank you again so much for being our guest. We're very grateful for it. And to all of our listeners, both new and returning, thank you so much for choosing to spend some time with us, listening and joining in on this episode of Sustaining the Herd. We look back to being with you again in a couple of weeks with another fun episode. Until then, thanks for joining the herd today.